Hey, it's Ron, and welcome to Bush Stories. Our guest today is the creator of the traditional bow hunting and wilderness podcast. You guys see him all over YouTube, all over Patreon. He is hunting all the time and sharing all his tips and advice with you guys. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Jason Samkowiak to Bush Stories. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ron from Standing Wolf, and we're hanging out today with Jason Samkowiak from the Traditional Bow Hunting and Wilderness Podcast. Jason, so happy to have you on Bush Stories.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm going to take it right to the beginning. We're going to go right back to Michigan State. I know you're in Georgia right now. You made the move. For whoever hasn't been following you on YouTube, which got a huge following. I don't know who hasn't been following you, but whoever hasn't been, you started off in Michigan. It's your home state. Let's take it right back. I'm really fascinated where how people got their beginnings, and not just trad, but how did you get into hunting to begin with? Did you have your family involved, or were you self-taught, or just take us back to the story? How did it all start for you?
Never had anybody there to teach me. My parents got divorced when I was 9 years old, and my mom and me and my brother, we moved up to northern Michigan while my dad stayed down in the Detroit area. So I didn't have that whole father figure around. When I was 12 years old, my mom dated a guy that was really big into trapping, took me out, taught me how to trap, that kind of stuff once. He wasn't really the best kind of a figure for that kind of thing. He gave me bear season opened up in Michigan. He said, "You don't need a license. You're fine." He gave me a double barrel 10 gauge, and he stuck me in a tree stand, and he left me there for 13 hours. He went to the bar and came back way late, and I was freaking out. And so it wasn't the best of beginnings and that kind of stuff, but I did have fun, and I knew it kind of set a seed that I liked to be out there.
Yeah.
And then it really didn't get into it too much till I was actually 19. I left northern Michigan because I met a girl and I moved back down south. And when I went back down south, I was like, man, I really miss being up north. And so then I picked up a bow. It was a Golden Eagle compound with the overdraw and all that fancy crap on there. Yep. And I went back up there. I bought the bow end of September. I went up there first weekend of October. I walked down a motorcycle trail, found a whole bunch of tracks crossing the road or crossing their deer tracks. And I just dropped down on my butt and sat there Indian style. And sure enough, 3 does came up behind me. I had my bow laying on the ground next to me. They were like 18 yards behind me, but my bow was laying on the ground. And I looked over my shoulder and they were standing right there. I turned around and stood up, realized I forgot my bow. So then I had to bend back down, pick up my bow, got my bow, pulled the arrow out of the quiver, knocked the arrow on it, came back, drew, locked in, and shot her. She stood there the whole time and let me do it. And perfect double lung hit, suicidal type deer. She ran like 20 yards and flipped, ass over apple cart and was laying there dead. I had to wave a guy down that was driving down a dirt road another 100 yards away. I had to wave him down because I didn't know how to field dress it. I didn't know what to do with this thing. He showed me, and then that was it. The seed was set. 3 months later, I bought my first traditional bow and never turned around since.
It's like the most.
When I was 19, yeah.
Yeah, the most perfect conditions to start off with. Everything was the stars aligned for that one.
Well, and I thought to myself too, I'm like, first right after I killed that deer, I thought, okay, I've killed the deer now, so I'm like a professional, so I need really cool stuff. So I went out and I bought this Browning Ballistic Mirage bow, and it's at the time it was like $400. It was super expensive, and it split limbs, or the limb cracked on it 2 times. I couldn't tune it right. I couldn't get it to fly. That was all in the span of 1 month. Finally, the pro shop replaced the limbs for me or gave me a new one. I couldn't get it to work right. It was nothing but problems. So I said, forget it. And I was at a Gander Mountain and I saw a Martin Mamba recurve. Nice. That one that I got hanging right up there, the painted one. It was sitting there on a shelf, it was right-handed though. And I shot it. I shot a compound right-handed, even though I'm left-handed, left eye dominant. I golf right-handed, bat right-handed. I do everything right-handed for that stuff. But he had a right-handed one. I shot it, and then he checked my eye dominance, told me I was left eye dominant. He said, don't take this one order one because you want left-handed. So it came 2 weeks later. I learned to shoot left-handed. And then I never hunted anymore that season with it, but then took me 3 more years to, 3 years of hunting with a traditional bow before I actually killed my first deer with it. Shot over the back of 11 deer in 3 years, before it came together. Yeah. So
that's
that
cool.
was my whole thing,
Yeah, that's cool. You had someone to point that out for you too, to make that correction. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because I know that guy still, believe it or not, that told me that bow, that told me about that bow. But I'll never forget. One of the things he said to me that day, which I still rib him for now. He's like, "Yeah, you can shoot both. You use your compound stuff for the serious hunting, and you use your recurve when you just want to go out and stalk a doe or something easy." Now I look back at him like, it's funny that you said that because you made it sound so simple. But now that I know you, and I know that for the last 40 years, you've never killed a deer with a traditional bow in your life. You have no idea how hard it is to stalk a doe with a recurve. Yeah, just go stalk a doe with your recurve. It's easy.
Salesmanship right there.
Right.
That's awesome. That's super cool, man. It just sounds like everything really worked out really well. I mean, a lot of people have a lot more challenges off the bat. I mean, obviously you had that 3-year gap, but for the most part, to kind of make that transition from a first kill so relatively quickly to getting back into it, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And like I said, I never left with it. As you know, the one thing about traditional archery, traditional bow hunting, you can never beat it. You can never get good enough. There is no mastering it. There is no expert. There is no professional. There is no top of the line. There is no good at it. It's just every day is a new challenge, and you just, you can never get good at it. It's just always striving for fun. Yep.
For sure. Well, I mean, you've been at it for a while, and kind of leading into my next question. I mean, again, for people who are familiar with you, which you got a huge audience, you've been at it for a while on YouTube for at least 10 years now. It's going on 10 years?
I think it's been 10 years now for YouTube, and I think the podcast is going on 11 or 12 years. I don't remember, somewhere in there. Yep. That's
a huge milestone. But what was the deciding factor for you wanting to start the podcast and also the YouTube channel? What made you think it's time to make a website, it's time to do a podcast, it's time to start documenting this stuff?
Well, with the podcast, this will sound funny because, at the time I was driving, I lived in Northern Michigan. I was a wedding photographer. All my business was down in Southern Michigan. So 3 hours, go down on a Thursday, do all my weddings and stuff over the weekend, drive back. So I had 6 hours a week in a car. I was originally listening to Jack Spirko's the Survival podcast and a bunch of podcasts I was listening to. And a lot of those guys were making their podcasts in their car. So I thought, well, you know what? I got this 6 hours of driving. Maybe somebody will want to hear what I have to say. And so then I thought I could do a podcast. I'm like, well, heck, maybe I could make an extra, $10,000 or $20,000 a year, which was never going to ever happen in a million years. But that was my thought. Then I could get good and make a whole bunch of money at this. To date, I think I've made a whopping I think I've made $200 in 13 years in advertising on my podcast. So, but that was my original intent, was to do it while I was driving, and I could share some stuff, help some people, and maybe make a little extra money. Never made any real money, but I enjoyed just being able to share my perspective on stuff. And that's why mine's always been based on just me talking more than a lot of interviews, because of the fact that it's just me in the car. I can't do the interviews like this real well when I'm driving. So it ate up my drive time and made it easier for me, especially coming back at 2:00 in the morning after working 12 hours. You're tired, you're exhausted. You got 3 hours to drive, putting on a headset and talking into a podcast kept me awake. It was better than hanging my head out the window singing Jukebox Hero, trying to stay awake.
Yeah, of course. But here you are 10 years later. I mean, you stuck it out. What was, I'm sure there must have been times where it's did it ever feel like it was kind of daunting, like you needed to make something, or was there times when you kind of didn't keep at it? Or
really, I always did. Actually, the only time I've ever slacked in a podcast actually was right when I moved down here over, a couple of months ago. I'd skip a week here, a week there, and it was mainly because of trying to get businesses established down. It was being just too busy here that I'd forget about it, or because I'm running video content every single day of the week on one of the platforms. And so that would be so busy. I forgot to upload a podcast. And it's always been Monday morning it's available for all these years. And if I were to wait a day and do it on Tuesday, nobody would ever listen to it.
Yeah.
So it was like, just skip it this week, but for the most part, I've always been pretty right on it. I thought I'd run out of content a lot earlier than I did. I still have stuff to talk about, but I think there's podcasts of me back on episode like 110 or something. Somebody was telling me where I'm on there, and I'm literally saying, I'm closer to the end of this than I am to beginning, And it was like year 2. So it's just keeps going, I guess. But
awesome.
I enjoy it. I really do. And like I said, I think a lot of people help. I try real hard to make it educational in any kind of level, something where they're going to pick up some tips on it, I like doing it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, more like the podcasting, the website, even your Patreon page is awesome too. But if I were to go to talk about your YouTube, I think what's really cool is like how diverse it is too. You're not just talking trad, although you got like everything you could think of about it. You talk about, just everything, like a lot of DIY stuff, everyday carry stuff. I mean, it's just a nice collection of stuff that a guy would be taking out to the bush skill wise, one way or the other, if they're going out hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I enjoy that. The YouTube's my favorite part of it. The podcast, like I said, is nice because it gives me something to do in the car. But the YouTube stuff, that I really enjoy. It's just so cool to see the comments where you're helping all these people and shortening their learning curve and making it easier and, that kind of thing. So I love the YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, it's so difficult to pick. You got so many videos that are awesome. I mean, I could talk about so many different things with you on all the content you've talked to. Just go check out his YouTube channel, guys. We'll make it easy on you. But let's talk about maybe your bow collection, because on YouTube, you got a ton of awesome bows. Is there any particular bow for hunting or shooting, whatever you like, that you find yourself always going back to? And is there a bow that really stands out as like your most favorite, like your most meaningful bow? Is there anyone in particular like that too?
I'm a one bow kind of person. Like I don't usually mix a bow up or I don't like bounce between bows, but I do believe in a clone system. What I mean by that is, so like if I buy a bow, I've been doing this now for even back to recurve days. I haven't shot a recurve I haven't owned a recurve in 30 years of my own. So yeah, it shows you how far back we're going though. But my attitude's always been get a bow, test it, check it, make sure you like it, make sure you love everything about the way it is. If it is, call the boyer up and order an identical one again. So I have 2 of the same exact bows. That way my arrows are always the same. My visual flight path of that arrow is always the same. My tuning is always the same. Everything about them are identical. So when I take 2 bows with me on any of my hunts, if something were to happen and I break one, I grab the other one. There is no learning curve or relearning. It's just set to go. And that's kind of how I've always ran all my bows. So I've been shooting northern mist bows now for the last, I want to say 8 or 10 years, somewhere in there. And about 6 or 7 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started shooting his ASL bows, the hill style bows.
Okay.
And I love it. I shoot one of the Northern Mist Classic hill style bows. And it was the first time I got one. I didn't know if I'd like it. He was kind of telling me, you're going to love the way this shoots. I'm like, well, then, all right, I'm going to order one. Go ahead, make me one. If I don't like it, I'll use it for bow fishing, was my attitude. Well, he made it, sent it to me. And none of it for free. I pay for everything, all my bow. But so I ordered one and he sent it to me and I got it and I shot it. And within it took me a half hour or so, probably 40, 50 shots to kind of get a feel for the straight grip, the straight limb, the way it felt, how, change it up so it shot the way I wanted, how it felt in my hand. And from that moment, I was hooked. And I didn't even wait a week. I called him in like a day or 2 later, said, build me another one, make it exactly the same. Now I got 3 of them. That's just, those are Tina and Bella's. Those are their recurves for the most part. But I have over here is my longbows, but I have 1, 2, 3, I have 4 Northern Mist longbows hanging there now, and they're all the same. They're all 57 pounds at my 26-inch draw length. They're all 64 inches. They're all identical clone bows.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good philosophy, actually. It makes a lot of sense because, you can be going from, I shoot recurve. I'd love to try getting into longbow in the near future, but right now, recurve is kind of where I stick with. But to switch up, there's so many little nuances that change the psychology of your shot, just from like the grip just from, like you said, I mean, if you're just adding a couple pounds, if like the length too, if the AMO is a bit longer, I mean, just these little nuances really change the psychology of your shot. You know, it may not be drastic and it may not be too prolonged, but just those things, like you just said, if you have a failure in the field, it makes a lot of sense to go into something that is just, there's no difference in how you perform mentally.
Yep. And especially because you spend all that time practicing. So all of your practice shots, everything your mind is mentally doing. And I'm an instinctive shooter. I don't gap shoot. You know, obviously I see my arrow, but I don't pay attention to any gap ranges. I don't do the stringy walkers or I don't do any of that kind of stuff. So I'll just purely looking into spots. So it's real important for me to see that flight of that arrow. And by shooting the same bows that are the exact same way, none of that stuff changes. So it's ready to go and works. And like I said, I haven't changed arrows in 10 years. I shoot the same exact arrows. They're tuned well. They do exactly what I want to. And there's just no guessing for me. I can take that whole bow and my arrow equation right out of the mix, and I can focus on the other stuff or problems that I have that I want to solve or tinker with, And then the other nice thing too, is by having two of the exact same bows, what I do is four now technically, but, I usually would rotate them. So every year I would grab one, shoot that bow all year. The next year I would grab the other one, shoot that one all year. So they were always in a rotation yearly. And I've been doing it that way. This is the first year I decided that I'm not going to do that. So this is actually two or three straight years in a row that I've been shooting this one. This is at Northern Miss Classic. But this is my favorite one. It's got the olive ash on there and, the Cody Riser. But anyway, I just didn't change it. Attitude now is I'm shooting the same bow all the time. I make a point every year, every 6 months to pull these other ones down, shoot them a few times in the yard, but till that one breaks, that's my bow.
That's awesome. Well, the amount of hunting you do, right? It makes sense to have that type of a system.
Yeah, I think so. For me, it just takes that other, it just, like I said, it keeps everything simple and functional, and in the woods, that's what's most important to me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Well, I think one thing I'd like to actually ask, talking about hunting the woods and that, tree stand versus spot and stock, which method has proven to be like giving you the most high success rate? And if you had to pick one, say on a perfect condition hunt tomorrow, which one would you kind of lean into?
Depends on what I'm going after. If it's for deer, I should say, because your question was success rate. For deer, I think your success rate in the stand is a lot better. Because of the fact that you're just up in the stand. So you're getting out of that wind factor, the scent zone, you get away with a lot more movement up there. So I think the stand is definitely a lot more successful. Fun factor, now that I'm down in Georgia and I'm doing so much spot and stalk hunting, I straight up love that. That's my favorite way to hunt. There's nothing that beats it. You sit in a stand like this for 6 or 8 hours, especially in November when I'm hunting all these different states and you might not sit in the same spot all day, but you're in a stand all day other than a quick shift or move for thermals. But you are like this for 12 hours a day. It's like, it gets exhausting day after day. When I'm still hunting, I'm out there, I'm seeing new territory, I'm covering ground, I'm moving around. And with the hogs, they're so mobile, and I like I said, still hunting, spot and stalk, still hunting, my absolute favorite way to do it. And for deer, I'll start doing it a lot more now too. Now that I've learned so much from doing it for hogs, that I'll carry that over and I'll start doing it. Because even now when I'm hog hunting, I walk up on so many deer. As a matter of fact, this morning I only went out for 3 hours because it was 100 degrees. But I did not see any hogs. But when I was coming back out, I was slipping up a creek through there and stuff. And I walked to like within 12 yards of a velvet buck that was in there just breaking out into 4 points like that. And but I walked right up to him. I was pretend stalking him, no arrow on the string, but I was sneaking in. And I just squatted down with my knees in the water. I was right there. He had no idea for like 6 minutes. He was right there.
Awesome.
So yeah, I like that kind of hunting.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like it's more exhilarating too.
Yes.
Just keeps it fresh. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Wind is tricky. Wind gets you all the time out there. That's the hard part. When you're on the ground, the wind is always going the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love to hear some of your stories, your top hunt stories. If you can come up with, say, your top one or two, if there's actually even one all time that you're like, damn, that was awesome. That was the best ever. What would it be?
That one actually, hang on, let me turn this off here. There we go. That one would have been one that happened. I I didn't go last year. So it would have been 2 years ago. And it was in a Midwest hunt in a different state. And I picked, and it's actually, I think it's either on my Patreon or it's on one of my vlogs from back then. I don't remember which, but I went into a new area. I found it at night. I was sitting in a cot in my wall tent, looking at my phone, just sitting here going through OnX and looking at topography and stuff like that. And I found a spot that I wanted to hunt. And, I remember because John from Tactic Saddle was in the camp with me, and he was still up looking at his, trying to figure out where he was going to go. But I found this spot, and I was like, I felt really confident. I'm like, that's it. That's where I'm going. I'm going to kill a deer there tomorrow night. And I rolled over and went to sleep. And, I got up that morning. Well, I had to use my canoe to get there. So I had to haul the canoe down there, pull the canoe off, drop in, use it to cross an area, got in there, went in, got set up, intentions of staying all day. And when I set up in there, I got there and then daylight broke. I picked it based on a couple of scrapes and some rubs and some just the way the terrain was. I was excited all in by headlight in the dark. I shot up the tree, and once I was up there, daylight broke, and I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling it at all. Like, you know what? I'm just not in the right spot. I don't like it. I'll sit here for a little longer. Then you're kind of like tapping. Hey, is it a little longer yet? I want to get down, and you're just. So finally, about an hour later, I shot down, packed up my stuff, headed down further down this ridge and working this side, looking for sign, found an area that looked pretty good. I shot back up in that tree. And then I sat there till like 11 o'clock. And I'm like, going, okay, nothing's come through here yet. I screwed this. I should have went somewhere else. And now I'm thinking to myself, it's a solid hour hike out of here back to my boat. Once I get in my boat, my canoe, it's an hour paddle back out of here. Then I got to get to my truck and load up. And then when I'm done with that, it's at least another 40-minute drive to an area that I'd probably want to go. Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to waste a whole day. I'm like, so you know what? I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to sit here and suck it out and be mad about it. Well, then 10 minutes later, here comes 3 of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in my life right down this trail right here next to me. I'm like, oh my God. So I get set. I got my bow ready. Well, they're like 40 yards away from me, and they stop here and they break off. 2 of them drop down. I'm bleating at them. Esper's trying everything. None of them are coming. They drop down in. I'm like, oh my God, but at least they were there. 15 minutes later, another huge buck, probably in 120, 130 inch. He comes up right here in front of me, right up this little dip on this military crest I was on. He comes up right there, walks directly to me. He's standing there right there 10 yards facing right at me like this. And I mean, he's just sitting there licking his lips and watching up on the top of the ridge side. I can't shoot him because he's facing me. And then sure enough, there's a doe or something. You can hear leaves rustling up there, and he just bails as fast as he can, never giving me a shot. And then I'm like, oh, man. So then I'm like just watching everything go on. And then all of a sudden, off the top of the ridge, I can hear rah, 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 rah. And here comes this buck, runs his doe down. He stands directly underneath me. I'm looking at him through the grate of my tree stand. I can't shoot him. It's a straight down shot. She went down off the hillside. Then as he's sitting there, stopped underneath me, there's another buck that came down that same trail that those other 3 bucks came down. He's staring at them. He then runs over there. It was just mad chaos until like 12:30 in the afternoon. And then it all just died. And I sat there thinking, what in the heck just happened? What just happened? So I'm like, okay, what do we do about this? I don't like where I'm sitting. This tree's too big. I can't shoot all the way around it. I can't get around it. I'm like, those 3 bucks, plus when this one went there, plus the way the wind is going now that the thermals are going to change, this is this way. I got to move over there 50 yards. So I dropped down, pulled my gear, shot over there, went over 50 yards, climbed up into this tree that was about the size of my pinky finger, but had a few branches on it. It was just super small. You're literally, when the wind was blowing, your whole tree was doing this. It was pretty bad, but it was where I needed to be. And it was so thick in there with this scrubble brush that I was really struggling to find shooting lanes, so it was really tough. So it was my only good tree. And I'm not kidding. It was, that big around. It was so little. I climbed up at about 12 feet, used 2 sticks, went up there about 10, 12 feet, set up on it. But there was a little brushy spot. I tucked right in there. I stayed standing. I got set. This was at like 115 or 130, and at 159, here came another 8-point, walked right by there, stood right there at 14 yards, done, game over. He ran, fell over dead, and then I just figured since it's been such a great day, I boned him out right there, got him in my pack, did all the process, the 3 hours back to the camp, and that was one of my best hunts I've ever had. It was a fun day. Yeah, but when it was supposed to fail, like I said, I moved 3 times. And I was mad that I was stuck there at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, pissed that I was stuck in this spot and couldn't make it to another good one in time. And then that's when, everything broke loose and turned into be amazing.
It just seems like just the sticking it out is like the key to success.
Well, for that day it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times it doesn't. There's a lot of times I'll sit there going, this sucks. I'm stuck here. And, but you got to weigh that option. Is it worth moving or is it not? It depends on how far you got to go or what you're going to do,
Yeah, I think considering like you said, the grind out, but also the activity that you had, it made sense to stay.
Well, when I saw it, for sure. But I didn't have that activity till almost noon. All of that activity happened in like a 1 hour period. It was unbelievable. And it was middle of the day. It was like from noon to 1 o'clock, and then I moved stands. And then the next deer that came in was that 8-point that I shot. That was like right a couple minutes before 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Was this back up north in Michigan or is this? No,
this is another Midwest state.
Okay.
This was Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now that you've been in Georgia for a bit, what's it like hunting in Georgia? Has there been anything that you're like, whoa, this is pretty awesome?
You change a lot of stuff around down here. Like you carry things that you never carried before, such as thermocells, bug spray. You carry extra shirts and deodorant, a Ziploc bag, so you can change when you get on stand. You climb up on stand, and once you're set in and you cool down, you take your shirt off and you put a fresh deodorant on and a brand new shirt on, and you stuff all that into a Ziploc bag and seal it because it's very hot. So little things like that. Snake boots, I'm wearing snake boots all the time. They're everywhere and nowhere, but they're here. You see all kinds of snakes and alligators. That's a whole different ball game too. When you go to cross these creeks and these sloughs, you got to kind of pay attention a little bit because there could be, gators I see gators in them all the time. So,
right.
So little stuff like that. But the terrain for mapping, Georgia is a very diverse state. When you're down where I am, where it's all flatland swamps, complete flatland swamps, it's very hard to use cyber scouting and stuff like that here. You can a little bit, but it's very tricky. When you get up into the north part or even in the west side where it's more hilly and things like that, the topography, you can do a lot more scouting that way. But here where I am, it's a lot of boots on the ground and have to go find the funnels and find the feed trees and find the stuff. So it's a lot of walking here. Right. Here, it's not uncommon for guys to walk 2 or 3 miles before they even set up with a stand on their back, and then climb up and hunt and walk 2 or 3 miles out after dark,
Well, it just, it just helps for that exfoliation of sweat too. You lose a couple pounds walking in, lose a couple pounds walking out.
Yes, an adventure. Yep, and don't trip on the diamondback rattlesnakes and.
That's awesome.
Yep, it's an adventure, but I love it. But it's and a season opens here down here where I'm at in Georgia. It'll take me a couple of years to get to this point where I'll do it this way because I am learning so much and I got to pick and choose right now. But I could technically between South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama, I can hunt deer from like August 15th through February 15th with unlimited tags.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's and rut options, rut time frames that start from rut in October and ending rut in February. I mean, there's every one of these places have different rut zones timing because of when a deer were introduced here. So like Alabama, especially Alabama in the same state, you have ruts in some parts that happen in October, some that happen in November, some that happen in December, some in January, some in February, just inside of Alabama. So, when you know where those pockets are, which they map out, but I can technically be hunting rut for 5 months a year and also be hunting deer for 7 months a year. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, it doesn't suck whatsoever.
Nope, and year-round hogs. Since I moved down here in November, there has not been a week that's went by that I haven't hunted at least a couple times a week.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure like having that opportunity, especially with being like a content creator too. I mean, it's just like perfect. Perfect condition.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I do for a living now, is the content creation. I still shoot weddings, occasionally. I kind of slowed a lot of that stuff down, but this is my main source of income, is between all the YouTube channels, the Patreon, all that kind of stuff. And that's every day, new content out there. So you're right. Being able to be in the woods and actually hunt stuff for real. That's huge.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm.
That's awesome. Well, with all the experience you've had, I always love kind of finding this answer or asking this question, because everyone's answers are so interesting, but there's so much to take from it. Like, if you were to start back again, like starting trad, specifically trad again, right from the start, like how would you give yourself like advice? What would you change anything, or would you like give yourself like advice on how to like shoot better, or like what to look for, or what would you do differently if you would do anything differently?
That is a very good question. And honestly, God, that's a tough one, because it's the value of all of this is the failures and the mistakes. That is where we learn and thrive. Like those first 3 years that I never killed a deer, they were the most educational, powerful 3 years that I ever spent in my life, in my hunting career. So I think that learning curve and the bumps we have along the way are way more powerful than somebody telling you how to do something. So I don't know if I'd change anything. I probably, but then on the same note, it's a love-hate relationship with a traditional bow, because I can't tell you how many times I've had to let massive monster deer and stuff like that walk by me at 25 yards because I won't shoot that far.
Yeah.
Where if I was a compound shooter, that would be nothing to it. So, like I said, there's a lot of, I'd probably tell myself to think about all that. Well, yeah, looking back, I'd probably, now that I know how much money I spent, how much time I spent, how much vacation time I spent hunting, I probably would tell my younger self to take up golf, buy a Porsche, and work more, and forget all this. Get a nice 3-piece suit, get out on the town, go have some martinis with your friends, and forget all about hunting. Yeah, I wouldn't change any of it.
Oh, that's good. Would there be anything like, would you just make suggestions for someone who's coming up, who's maybe watching this or watching your stuff now, like someone who's, I don't know, could be a young guy or even a kid or whatever it may be, but is there anything that you would say, recommend on what to focus on or what to spend more time on? Or is there anything that you would say, maybe this would be good just if you're starting out?
Yeah, that I can do for sure. 2 things. 1, keep it as simple as possible. It is a stick and a string, where most people that are coming into traditional today are coming in because they are tired of sight pins, rangefinders, cam tuning, cam timing, release aids, all this stuff that's going on in the compound world. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, they're killing machines and they do awesome. But all of that stuff that's there, when people come over here, it is a stick and a string. You pull it back, you point the arrow where you want to let go, and you let the string go. And the more complicated than that you make it, the more you're going to hate it. So let it be simple and have fun. Forget about killing, Pope and young animals anymore. Forget about killing, 30 deer a year. Forget about all that and just have fun, and then let the rest of it fall. And once you start doing that and you go out and you practice, you start shooting, you start enjoying yourself, and you just start going with the flow, accepting the limitations of it. If you're only, you pick it up in your first year, you're only putting them in, tight groups at 10 yards. If you want to go hunt. Tell yourself you're not going to take a shot farther than 8 yards. Most people, when I tell them that, they're like, what are you talking about? How do you get within 8 yards of a deer? Well, when you go out there and you start doing this, it doesn't take you long with traditional equipment to get to a point where you're regularly setting up for, that's what I want now, even is 8-yard shots, 8, 10, 12, So keep it simple, focus on having the fun factor of it, let the rest of it come around. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Don't change things until you need something changed. Okay. Don't think that this arrow is going to be a better arrow for you just because somebody on the internet said it is. Wait till you use your arrow and you go, you know what? I don't like the way this is kicking. Then you bare shaft it. And you go, okay, you know what? I'm a little stiff. Now it's time to change something. Yeah. But till then, don't go chasing unicorns. Don't overthink it. Don't think that you're going to go out and buy a rattle and antler and a grunt tube. And next thing you know, you hit these and blow on that. And every deer in the county comes running at you. It's not, there's no magic thing out there. Just keep it simple and have fun with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I love it, man. Well, I don't even know where to go from there because that's such great advice. Just keep it simple, have fun. I think, a lot of people don't have fun, because they're, like you just said, they're so focused on the end goal of taking in the kill, getting the harvest. Whether or not they're putting mounts on the wall or not, that's their priority. But it's just too much, and a lot of the times the emphasis isn't on just having fun and learning something too.
And the fact that when you shoot a traditional bow, it's 100% mental. Okay. I love it when you see the compound guys, like back when you used to hear Chuck Adams and those guys, archery's 90% mental. And I'm sitting there going, you're using that. Try using this. See this thing? Watch, you'll see 90% mental. But there's, like you said, they overcomplicate it, in animals. I promise you this. You could have a wall full of 180-inch deer with whatever bow you're using, or compound crossbow, rifles. You have a ton of them. You kill a button buck with a traditional bow, it will be the one that you'll wish you were mounting. It'll have that kind of power for you, because it is all a mental aspect. You were the one in control. There's no let off on it. There's no wall or whatever they call it. There's none of this stuff. It is purely 100% instinctual and animalistic, and it's a predator prey scenario, and it's just got a lot of power to it. And if people would focus more on that challenge and making that happen, and the reality of it, rather than I got to go find a place where I can kill 140-inch. It doesn't matter with this bow. Go out there and have fun and enjoy it, but be ethical. Shoot your designated distances. Nothing pisses me off more than when I hear people start talking about, well, I can shoot my stick bow out to 45 yards. I'll be perfect to hunt at 45 yards. Yeah, I don't like that personally. Everybody, ethics are a personal thing, but I don't think any animal should be being shot with a traditional bow out there that far away. And people try to push that because they can't hunt closer.
Right.
Traditional bow is about getting in as close as you possibly can. And I try to set up all my stuff 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, somewhere in there if I can, and that's the thrill of it.
That's cool, man. Jason, you are the best, man. I'd love to know if you could let everyone know where to find you these days. It'd be awesome. Not that they don't know where to find you, but where is the best spots people could check you out?
Anywhere. If you Google Traditional Bowhunting and Wilderness Podcast, it's going to be everywhere. TBW podcast will show up, but that's my website where all the podcasts are. They're also on all your Stitcher and iTunes and all that stuff too. And then YouTube, Traditional Bowhunting Wilderness Podcast. Anywhere you type that in, it's going to pop me up. So you'll have all that information there.
I'll put all the links in there too, but make sure to check out your Patreon too, because that's where a lot of the meat and potatoes happen.
That's where I put all the good stuff. Since YouTube kind of demonetized the bloody stuff, the animal harvests, the hero shots and things like that, I thought, that's not going to work. So I started that Patreon channel, and it has evolved into where I put all my hunts. So most of my hunting vlogs, they're like an hour long, and it's like through the GoPro, and then it's right there hunting with me, and it shows every part of the harvest, hunts, the setups. And all those go on there. So the Patreon is where I put all my best content. I straight up love that channel. Yeah, but I have no holds barred on there. No restrictions on there. No algorithms that are going to slow me down. If I show how to bone out an animal, it's not going to slow. It's all. Yeah, I love the Patreon setup. So that's there too. But that's also on the TBW podcast stuff. There's links right to it.
That's awesome, Jason. I really appreciate you being a guest.
I appreciate you having me on.
That's awesome. Anyways, guys, go check out Jason's stuff, and thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.